Hello everybody, welcome back to Art Smart. Today we are doing a review of these slimline DVDs that you can get usually at places like Walmart. I actually found these at a Dollar Tree not too long ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago. So maybe it is a while ago. But anyway, these are of Davey and Goliath. This is the TV series that was released on television during, what was it, the 1960s? Yeah, the 1960s. And you would also continue to see these be released, though, and shown at places like churches, especially the Lutheran Church, which is the one that commissioned these. You would see them for many, many years in film form afterwards. Davey and Goliath is a series that has a bad reputation with a lot of people, and I think it's not fair. A lot of people said that they hate Davey and Goliath and that they think that this is just heavy-handed preaching. Well, here's the thing. It is preaching to a degree. It is done by the church. It is a Christian series that has been released to teach Christian morals. So, of course, it's going to have some preachiness to it. That's going to happen in these particular cartoons. I think for the most part they didn't really hide the fact that these were Christian cartoons. Yes, they were released and shown oftentimes on national television, so people felt that it was kind of heavy-handed, but I don't think that they really hid the fact that these are Christian cartoons, so it's easy to just turn it off. I think people that are not interested in cartoons because they're Christian, I can understand that, but at the same time, I don't think that they were trying to hide what they were trying to do. So if you were watching it, I think you were watching it because you found something about it interesting. If your parents made you watch it, I'm sorry, but I don't think that they were trying to hide it anyway, is I guess what I'm trying to say. I do think, though, that for the most part, these cartoons are pretty good in trying not to be super heavy-handed. I do think that that's also a not very legitimate criticism. For the most part, these are just very moral stories. I think that the Christian side of it is kind of slipped in most cases. It is a little preachy, but I think they could have done it much worse if you're talking about being heavy-handed. I think that they kind of slip in the message relatively gently, usually towards the end. It is very, very moral, and the morals maybe are a little heavy-handed, but I don't think that they're really scripture bashing you or anything with these. I also think that these particular cartoons, for the most part, were relatively well done. I think that the animation is a little stiff in places, but considering the models they had to work with, I think that they got a surprising range of emotion and things on the faces of these characters. And the pacing is a little bit slow, but for the most part, they seem to have a very... At the end of the day, I think that they try to give it some action in the middle. It's usually relatively benign action, but they try not to make it overly slow. I think it could have been much slower, I guess is what I'm trying to say. These particular cartoons, they're not exactly the most fun. They're not exactly the most interesting if you're used to watching Looney Tunes cartoons with things blowing up and guns going off and bombs, in people's hands exploding and making their beak fly backwards. It's definitely not going to be like that. But I do think this particular cartoon series is a little bit better than people give it credit for. It's definitely not as boring as I was expecting it to be, because I've listened to a lot of people say, oh, that series is so boring and preachy. I wasn't really bored. I wasn't super into it, but I wasn't super bored either. I mean, they are okay. They were moralistic, and I don't think that they're nearly as bad as most people like to say. If you compare them to Gumby, they are slower than Gumby, and they are not quite as, they're definitely not nearly as surreal as Gumby. So if it's a poor comparison to say that these are like Gumby just because they were made by Art Clokey. I think it was a very different thing. They have very different feel to them, and so I don't think that they should really be compared together. So would I recommend picking these up? These are cheap, man. And for the most part, these cartoons are getting harder to find. So if you are a fan of Davey and Goliath, or think that you might be one, you should definitely pick these up offline. This is a good way to find them. They usually have 6 and 4 episodes on here. So that's not bad, for a couple bucks. I would definitely recommend picking these up if you think that you might be interested. For the people that don't like it, I understand that you may not like to have a heavy-handed message. I don't think it's that heavy-handed, but to each his own. And yes, if you are not a Christian, maybe you want to skip these. I do think that the Christian message is not nearly as heavy-handed, though, as most people say they are, in my opinion. So hopefully this makes you a little bit more art smart, and you'll continue to come back for more cartoon reviews. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.